Hey, welcome to Caritas Querens. In this series, we're taking a look at what I'm calling Catholic universalism, a form of universalism which I believe, first of all, is totally consistent with the teaching of the Catholic Church and with most mainline Christianity, and also Catholic in the sense of being universal, insofar as I believe that this version does not reject other strands of eschatology, infernalist or annihilationist, but embraces them and sees them as different aspects of the truth, which, together with universalism, actually provide a richer, fuller, deeper understanding of the end and of our destiny and what it takes to attain that destiny. So I've given two analogies so far, and I want to share one more analogy. And this one I like because I think it focuses more on how all of this takes place and how all of this really stems from who God is and our relation to God. So I first thought about this when I was one time my kids were trying to start a fire or something, and actually they were trying to start a fire yesterday too, and we had like rain for about 5 or 6 days straight, like drizzle and light rain on and off, and so they were having a hard time getting any logs to ignite, and because the logs were too wet, right? So here's the analogy, and it has to do with God as a fire, God as consuming fire. Okay, so imagine that you have a log, and imagine that it's pretty wet, it's pretty damp. Okay, so if you have that log, if you have a fire going, a pretty good fire going, and you put that log on the fire, well, the first thing that's going to happen is the fire is going to drive out the moisture that's in the log, whether it's water, rainwater, or something like that, or the sap that maybe was still in it if it hasn't been cut very long ago or something. It's going to drive out the moisture that's in that log, because that moisture is inconsistent with the fire. The two are mutually exclusive, and so the fire first deals with that part of the log that is mutually exclusive with itself. The fire gets rid of the moisture, which is in and of itself opposed to the fire itself by nature. Okay, once it does that, then you can say that basically it starts transforming the wood, and it actually starts transforming the wood into itself. And as kind of a byproduct, you see ash develops. And we know that chemically, what happens is the fire is actually is kind of catalyzing a reaction that's taking place in the wood, involving the wood and the air itself, which you could say is like spirit, right? like wind or breeze or spirit. So there's a chemical reaction taking place, and part of this involves a byproduct, the ash. In other words, there are parts of the wood that were not consumed, or parts of the wood that were not necessary in a sense, or were not consistent with the fire. Parts of the wood that really, you could say, could not inherit the life of the fire. Part of the wood that could not become fire. Part of the wood that could not inherit, in a sense, metaphorically speaking, the life of the fire. And they become ash. Okay, they just have to be annihilated, just gotten rid of, out of the fire. Okay, and then finally, once that happens, the remainder of the wood actually becomes so united with the fire that, unless you knew better, you could say that it's just all one fire, right? The wood itself becomes the fire in a sense, still distinct, and yet at the same time, one with the fire. So what I want to say is that I think in this analogy, it shows us how our relation to God and His presence has three different aspects, in a sense, or you could almost say three stages that lead to our final end. So first of all, if we are like the wood that is saturated with moisture, the first thing that has to happen to us in God's presence is that the moisture in us, which is by its nature inconsistent or opposed to God as the fire, has to be driven out, has to be separated from us, and it has to be separated forever. Once the wood's going, if I pour a bucket of water on there again, guess what? It's that water has to be separated again. Otherwise, if it's too much, it'll just douse the fire. So the water has to be removed forever. The moisture has to be removed from forever, permanently, in order for the wood to be fully transformed into the fire. That's like hell, an endless, permanent, definitive separation of that in us, which is, in a sense, by nature, diametrically opposed to the life of God, the old man, or the life of sin, the life in Adam. And then what has to happen is there are parts of us that are inconsistent with that transformation. Parts of us that, like parts of the wood which chemically can't be combusted, can't be, part of the become part of the fire. Parts of us that have to just be annihilated, have to be gotten rid of, in order for the transformation or the reaction, the chemical reaction, so to speak, to take place and to move forward. And these are various sins that we may have committed, or sinful habits, or attractions, or tendencies, or imperfections, or attachments that have to be annihilated. They just have to be gotten rid of, like the ash, so that the transformation, the spiritual transformation into the life of God and the fullness of life with God can move forward and can really progress. And once that happens, that, by the way, that is like annihilationism. Parts of us that cannot inherit immortality, that have to be annihilated, have to be just gotten rid of. And then finally, once that happens, then we can attain to full union with God in that fire, in that flame of love. And that is universalism. That is our ultimate destiny, that we are saved, that we are brought into full union with God, just as that wood, by its nature, is capable of union with the fire. But it's all instigated by the fire itself. And again, first the fire has to drive out the moisture, which is naturally inconsistent with it. And then the fire also has to take care of, in the process of combustion, parts of the wood which chemically are not consistent with the fire. Chemically are just byproducts, in a sense, or ash that is just gotten rid of. So that then the wood can actually be united with the fire, and be one, really, in a sense, become the fire. So anyway, so that's my third analogy on Catholic universalism, showing how really these three, infernalism, annihilationism, and universalism, can be seen as not three mutually exclusive interpretations of Revelation or three mutually exclusive doctrines of eschatology, but can be seen as three different aspects of the same process of eschatology, or three different angles or perspectives on the same reality, on the same truth, of what God has destined us for and how he intends to bring us to that destiny. Again, if I were to make three statements in the beginning about the wood, if I were to say that, first of all, this wood is going to become fire, okay, that's universalism. Secondly, nevertheless, that in some way, in some part of this wood is going to be permanently separated from the wood and from the fire. And yet at the same time, I can say that there are parts of this wood that are going to have to cease to exist. That are going to have to become byproducts and leave the equation, leave the chemical formula, so to speak. Again, each of those three statements might seem to be mutually exclusive. You might say, well, how can the wood become fire, and at the same time, in some aspect, the wood is separated from the fire, or parts of the wood cease to exist. They're no longer part of the wood. They're just ash. How could those all be true? And yet we see in the natural process of combustion of a log being lit on fire and becoming part of the fire, we see that they are all true. And they just are showing us different aspects of that same process, of that same reality. So again, if you found this useful, first of all, thank you for watching. If you found it useful, I'd appreciate if you'd like, subscribe if you're not already, share with others you think might appreciate this. And as always, I really would love to hear from you if you have any comments, things you agree with, disagree with, questions, insights. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, adios.